This is the story of Jabez, a boy born in pain, known for it, and expected to carry it for the rest of his life. But Jabez didn't accept that his future had to be shaped by his past. Instead, he asked God for something bigger, something bold. Not for riches or revenge, but for blessing, purpose, and protection. And God answered him. Because it's okay to ask God for big things when your heart is right. The hot Judean wind kicked up small clouds of dust as it passed through a narrow valley lined with sycamore trees. Wild goats leapt between rocks, birds chirped overhead, and somewhere down in the dry field near the edge of the village, a boy named Jabez swung a crooked stick at a thorn bush. He missed. Again. Yahweh, why did I have to be born with a name like this? He muttered. From the ridge above, an older boy called out, "Hey, Pain Boy, try not to trip over your own shadow." The others laughed. Jabez's grip on the stick tightened. He didn't say anything. He was used to it. He'd heard it his whole life. Jabez. It meant sorrow, pain. His mother had given him the name on the day he was born. A hard birth, people said, nearly killed her. Some whispered that it had broken her spirit. She didn't say much about it anymore, but the name stuck. That evening, Jabez sat near a low fire behind his family's tent, kicking pebbles into the embers. His little sister Miriam brought him a chunk of barley bread. "You missed dinner," she said. "Wasn't hungry," he replied, and she sat beside him. "They teased you again?" He shrugged. "Why don't you say something back?" Jabez looked at her and gave a half smile. "Because if I yell, they win. And if I hit, they'll just say I'm full of pain like my name says." "But you're not," she said. He didn't answer, because he wasn't sure. Later that night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Jabez slipped out into the field. The stars were sharp and brilliant overhead. The night was cool and clear. He dropped to his knees in the dust, and he prayed. "God of Israel, I don't want to be what they say I am. I don't want to be stuck in a story I didn't choose. I want more. I want to live without fear. I want to do something good, something big, something that matters. Please bless me, enlarge my borders, let your hand be with me, and keep me from evil so I don't cause pain." The night stayed quiet. No thunder, no fire from the sky, just the breeze. But something felt different, like the weight on his shoulders had shifted just a little. Jabez stood, brushed the dirt from his knees, and looked out over the land, the fields, the hills, the dark outlines of mountains far away. "Maybe one day," he whispered, "this land won't just belong to other people. Maybe it'll be mine. And maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't be remembered for his pain, but for his prayer." The next morning, before the sun had fully warmed the valley, Jabez stood at the edge of the northern fields, staring at a patch of land that didn't belong to him. It was quiet, except for the crows. The soil was rich, dark, not like the dry, stony land his family barely scraped a living from. His heart beat faster. "This land would feed 10 families, he whispered. His voice echoed softly. "Bless me and enlarge my border." It was the same prayer he'd prayed the night before. But now, standing there in the morning light, he felt a strange mix of boldness and nervous energy. "Do something, Jabez," he muttered to himself. "Take a step. Any step." He walked forward and crouched down, running his fingers through the soft dirt. It smelled like rain, though the skies had been clear for weeks. "You lost?" Jabez spun around. 3 boys, older than him, stood at the edge of the field. One of them, Ryman, smirked. "Did you forget where your family's land ends, Pain Boy?" Jabez stood up slowly. I wasn't doing anything wrong. You were touching what's not yours, said another, cracking his knuckles. Jabez swallowed. I was just looking. Ryman stepped closer. People like you don't get land like this. You get names that remind the rest of us to stay away. I didn't choose my name, Jabez said, trying to keep his voice steady. Number. But you wear it like a curse. Then without warning, one of the boys shoved Jabez hard. He stumbled back and landed on his side, the dirt puffing up around him. Go home, sorrow boy, Rimon said. The laughter echoed as they turned and walked away. Jabez stayed on the ground a moment longer, fists clenched, face hot with shame. But something inside him burned hotter than embarrassment. It wasn't just anger, it was refusal. That evening, Jabez returned home late, covered in dust. His mother glanced up from grinding grain. What happened to you? Nothing, he said quickly. She raised an eyebrow. That's a strange name for a split lip. He looked down. After a pause, he said, I found land today. Good land. His mother sat back. Jabez, we don't own land like that, and people like Rimon's father don't share. I know. She studied him. Then why are you smiling? Because I think God heard me. That night, Jabez knelt again under the stars. His prayer was the same, but this time it wasn't quiet or uncertain. It was fierce, focused. God of Israel, I believe you're not done with me. I don't know how, but I trust you. Enlarge my territory, even if the first step hurts. The village well was deeper than any in the region, nearly 50 feet to the bottom. When it dried up for the first time in over a generation, everyone panicked. Carts lined the roads, people grumbled, crops began to wither, water had to be hauled in from miles away. The elders called an emergency meeting under the shade of the fig tree in the village square. We need a new well dug, one of them said. And deeper than the last, added another. But no one's willing, a woman muttered. It's rocky, dangerous work. No one wants to spend a month breaking through stone just to hit water. Jabez listened quietly from the edge of the circle, leaning against a cart, arms crossed. Then the village chief turned. We'll pay silver. Not much, but enough. No one stepped forward. Until, I'll do it, Jabez said. The crowd turned. Some scoffed, others laughed. Jabez? What, you think you'll dig through sorrow like you dig through dirt? Someone muttered. But the chief squinted at him. You serious, boy? Jabez nodded. Give me a shovel and some rope. I'll start at dawn. The next morning, the sun had barely peeked over the horizon when Jabez arrived at the dig site. The ground was hard, sun-baked. A ring of stones marked the old well's edge. Nearby sat a worn shovel, a coil of rope, and a few empty water jars. He picked up the shovel and whispered under his breath, Bless me, enlarge my territory, and keep me from evil. Then he started to dig. The days were long. The work was brutal. Dirt gave way to gravel, then to rock. Jabez's hands blistered, his arms ached, his back burned under the sun, but every morning he came back. And slowly, the whispers began to change. Did you hear? Jabez is still digging. Still? After 10 days? He hasn't quit. Maybe he's not a joke after all. On the 14th day, just before sunset, Jabez struck something different. It wasn't rock. It was damp. He dug faster, and then a gasp. Water. Cold, Clear water rushed into the hole, soaking his sandals. He whooped and fell to his knees, laughing. People from the village came running. He had done it. That night, back by the fire, Miriam grinned as she handed him a bowl of stew. I heard the chief called the new well Jabez's spring. He looked up, surprised. Really? She nodded. Said it was the first thing you brought to life. Jabez smiled slowly. Then maybe I'm not just sorrow anymore. She nudged his shoulder. Told you. Later, under the stars, Jabez whispered again. Thank you, God, for dirt, for sweat, for the work no one wanted. He looked out over the hill, the moonlight shining on the jars now filled with fresh water. Maybe big blessings begin in deep places. Word traveled fast in the region of Judah. A new well, a reliable spring, dug by the boy with the cursed name. They called it luck. They called it strange. But no one could deny it was real. And that's when the invitation came. Jabez was fixing the roof of the goat shelter when he heard the hoofbeats. A fine chariot stopped near his tent. The horses were dusted with gold. The driver stepped aside, and a tall man in purple robes stepped down, brushing off his sleeves. Are you Jabez? Jabez stood slowly, brushing straw off his tunic. I am. The man smiled. I bring word from Lord Haran of Ziph. He wishes to meet you. Jabez blinked. Me? Why? He's heard of your well and your prayerful ambition. The word prayerful sounded strange coming from the man's lips. Still, Jabez nodded. When? Now. The journey took hours. As the sun sank behind the cliffs, the chariot pulled into the gates of Ziph, larger, louder, and richer than Jabez had ever seen. Stone homes, loud markets, guards with spears. He kept his head down. The palace was cool and shadowed. Oil lamps flickered along the walls. At the far end of the hall sat Lord Haran, draped in crimson robes, rings glittering on every finger. He didn't rise, just stared. So, you're the boy with the stubborn shovel. Jabez bowed respectfully. I'm the one who dug the well, yes. You asked your God for more, didn't you? Haran smirked. And he gave you a spring. Not bad. Jabez stayed quiet. I like people who ask for more, Haran continued, which is why I have a job for you. He stood and paced slowly. There's land east of here, rich land, unclaimed, but cursed, they say. No one will settle there. He stopped and pointed a jeweled finger at Jabez. I want you to go. I'll give you workers, supplies. If you succeed, if you turn that wasteland into something, I'll give you a portion of it. Jabez's eyes widened. A portion? Haran grinned. A big one. Your own name. Your own land. Real status. No more sorrow, just success. It was everything Jabez had prayed for, and yet something in Haran's tone felt sharp, cold. What's the curse? Jabez asked quietly. Old stories. Haran waved dismissively. People hear noises. Crops fail. It's probably nonsense. Why me? Haran leaned forward. Because you're either crazy or chosen, and either one makes you interesting. That night, Jabez lay awake in a guest chamber lined with stone. He stared at the ceiling. A land of his own, a chance to prove his name wrong forever. But the voice inside him whispered, big blessings are good, but not every offer is from God. He sat up and walked to the window, watching the stars. Then he prayed, Lord, if this isn't from you, close the door. But if it is, show me how to walk into it with your hand on mine. The road east of Ziph twisted through dry hills and crooked olive groves. The land grew quieter with every step, less birdsong, fewer trees, and an odd silence that felt like the world was holding its breath. Jabez walked ahead of the caravan. Behind him were 2 ox carts, a few workers Lord Haran had sent, and his friend Oren, a quiet boy from the village who had insisted on coming along. "This doesn't feel right," Oren said as they passed a broken watchtower. "Why?" Jabez asked. Oren looked around. "It's too still. No farms, no children. Even the birds avoid this place." Jabez paused. "That's why they call it cursed." By sunset, they reached a ridge that looked out over the land. It was wide, almost endless. Wild grass waved in the wind. Strange rock formations jutted out like teeth, but in the center, a spring bubbled out of the earth. "Water," Jabez said. "There's life here." Oren looked uneasy. Then why did everyone leave it behind? They made camp near the spring, but no one slept much that night. The wind howled through the hills. At one point, the oxen kicked and cried as if something had spooked them, and just before dawn, a loud crack split the air, like wood snapping deep in the earth. The men jumped. "Just the trees," Jabez said, trying to sound calm, but even he wasn't sure. The next morning, he knelt near the spring and whispered, "God, I don't understand this place. But if you've brought me here, show me what you see. Help me walk in faith, not fear." As he opened his eyes, sunlight broke over the ridge, and in that light, the land didn't look cursed. It looked waiting. They began clearing the brush. The men grumbled, but the work moved forward. Days passed, then a week, then 2, and slowly, the land began to change. They found soil soft enough to plant, fruit trees hidden in the hills, old stones that looked like the corners of forgotten homes. "This land was lived in," Oren said, brushing dust off a carved rock. "Maybe it's not cursed," Jabez replied. "Maybe it was forgotten." But on the 14th night, just as they lit their fires for supper, a stranger appeared on the ridge, tall, wrapped in dark cloth, face hidden. He pointed at Jabez and spoke only one sentence. "You should not be here." The workers froze. Jabez stood slowly. "Who are you?" The man didn't answer, just turned and vanished into the trees. Oren grabbed Jabez's arm. "We should leave." Jabez looked at the spring, at the land, at the light now fading from the sky. "No," he said, "we stay." "Even if it's cursed?" Jabez nodded. "Because God doesn't bless fear, He blesses faith." The next morning, the wind blew colder than usual, whistling through the hollow places of the hills. The workers were quiet, their eyes darting toward the ridge where the stranger had stood the night before. Oren approached Jabez at the spring. "I don't like this." "You've said that every day," Jabez replied, kneeling to refill a water jar. "This time, I mean it more." Jabez smiled a little, but his heart was heavy too. He hadn't slept. Not because he was afraid, but because something had changed. The land felt unsettled, like something was waiting to be found. That afternoon, while digging along the base of a stone outcrop, one of the workers shouted, "Jabez, come see this!" Jabez ran over. The man had uncovered a large, flat stone buried beneath layers of dust and vines. Together, they cleared the surface. Symbols etched deeply into the rock, ancient, faded, but still visible. What do they mean? Orrin asked. Jabez studied them silently. One symbol stood out, a flame within a circle. I've seen this before, he said, in an old scroll. It marked places where people worshipped false gods. The worker stepped back. So it was cursed, one muttered. No, Jabez said. It was defiled. That's not the same. That night, as the fire crackled and the men whispered in fear, Jabez stood up and faced them. I know what this land was, he said. I know who used it before, but I also know who made it in the first place. God. And no curse written by men can undo what God can redeem. The firelight flickered across their faces. He took a breath. I came here because I asked God to bless me, and I believe He brought us here not to be afraid, but to restore what was lost. The next morning, Jabez returned to the stone alone. He knelt beside it, not to study, to pray. Lord, he whispered, this place was once filled with darkness, but I believe you've brought me here to bring light. So I ask again, enlarge my territory, not just the land, but the legacy. Let this place speak of you. As he finished the prayer, a warm breeze stirred the grass. The first breeze all week. Later that day, a new spring bubbled up just a few feet from the cursed stone, clear, cold, fresh. 2 springs? Orrin blinked. From the same hill? Jabez looked up at the sky. Number, from the same God. By sunset, the workers were singing again. Fear had faded. Hope had returned. And Jabez? He didn't just feel like a survivor anymore. He felt like a steward of land, of faith, of a story that was still being written. The land that was once feared now flourished. Wild vineyards began to grow again. Sheep grazed in tall grass. The 2 springs flowed strong and clear, feeding the valley and the hearts of those who worked it. Word spread. They called it Jabez's Valley. Travelers came. Traders stopped. Children played along the creek bed, laughing where curses once whispered. Even the workers who had once feared the land now stayed by choice, building homes and planting roots. Orrin stood on the ridge one morning, arms crossed. I can't believe it, he said, watching farmers harvest figs below. Jabez grinned. Believe it. Orrin chuckled. You really prayed this into existence, didn't you? Jabez's smile faded into a look of quiet awe. I didn't build this. God did. I just asked. That afternoon, a horn sounded at the southern road. A familiar chariot rolled into view, gold trim, polished wheels. Lord Haran. He stepped down, dusting off his crimson robe with the air of a man expecting applause. Well, well, he said, surveying the valley, you did it. Jabez nodded. God did it. Haran smirked. Right, of course, the invisible helper. He pulled a scroll from his cloak and unrolled it. I brought your contract. Jabez blinked. What contract? The one we spoke of, Haran said. You make the land bloom, and I give you a portion. But now that you've done more than anyone expected, I've added a few details. He handed Jabez the scroll. Jabez read silently. Then again. Then again. His brow furrowed. This says the land and the wells now fall under Zipf's control. Correct. and that I'll continue managing it for you. You'll still live here, of course. People will still call it yours, but technically, yes, it's mine. Jabez looked up, a storm rising in his chest. That's not what we agreed. Haran raised an eyebrow. It's what's best for everyone. You need protection, structure. I have resources, men, authority. You didn't offer any of that when the ground was cursed and the trees were dead. Haran's smile faded. Careful, boy. I asked God for this, Jabez said, not you. A hush fell over the workers nearby. Orrin stepped up behind Jabez, voice low. What are you going to do? Jabez didn't answer right away. He looked around, the trees, the homes, the people laughing by the water. He remembered the nights he'd knelt in the dust, crying out to God for something more. And he remembered his prayer. Let your hand be with me, and keep me from evil. He looked Haran in the eye. No, Jabez said clearly. I won't sign it. Haran's jaw tightened. You'll regret that. Jabez stepped forward. Better to lose land than lose what God gave me. Haran turned sharply and climbed back into his chariot. You'll hear from me again, he called over his shoulder. The wheels rolled away. Dust rose. But Jabez stood tall. That night, under the stars, he prayed again. Lord, thank you for blessing me. But more than anything, thank you for helping me keep it without compromise. Let your hand stay with me, always. And in the quiet stillness of the night, he felt no fear, only peace. 3 days passed after Haran's departure. 3 quiet days. Too quiet. No letters, no messengers, just the sound of the wind in the olive trees and the steady trickle of water from the springs. But Jabez could feel it, like storm clouds building far off on the horizon. Orrin tried to keep spirits up. Maybe Haran's given up, he said, pouring grain into sacks. Maybe he realized he can't bully someone who's not afraid. Jabez looked out toward the ridge. He didn't seem like someone who gives up. On the 4th morning, a rider approached. Dust trailed behind him like a comet. He carried a scroll with Haran's seal, red wax pressed into the shape of a lion's tooth. Jabez opened it slowly. Orrin read over his shoulder. It says, You've been summoned to appear before the council in Ziph. Tomorrow, Jabez muttered, at sunrise. That night, the workers gathered around the main fire. We heard about the letter, one said. What will you do? I'll go, Jabez said. I won't run from it. Should we come? Jabez shook his head. Number, this is my fight. But as he turned to head inside his tent, he noticed a figure at the edge of the light. A traveler, wrapped in dust-colored robes. Can I help you? Jabez called out. The man stepped forward. I was told there's a man here who prays big prayers. Jabez blinked. That's not what most people say. The man chuckled. That's because most people are afraid of those kinds of prayers. But I'm not. My name is Elon. I'm a trader from the East. Jabez invited him to sit. Over bread and olives they talked. Elon told stories from distant lands. And then, as the fire died down, he looked at Jabez. I passed through Ziph before coming here. Word travels fast. They're calling you a thief. Jabez looked into the embers. For claiming land no one wanted. Figures. Elan leaned in. They can take your name, twist your story, but they can't erase your walk with God. Jabez glanced at him. You believe in him? Elon nodded. In a land where men worship idols and gold, I heard a voice once. Not loud, but real. And since then, I've followed the quiet path, like you. Later that night, after Elon had turned in, Jabez stood alone beneath the stars. He didn't feel afraid. He felt grounded, ready. He whispered once more, "Bless me, but not to make my name great, only yours." And for the first time, he realized something important. He wasn't just praying for his territory anymore. He was standing for everyone who'd been told they weren't enough. Everyone with a name like Sorrow. Everyone who thought God didn't see them. And tomorrow in Ziph, he would carry that prayer with him like armor. The sky over Ziph blushed pink as Jabez stepped through the iron gates. Crowds were already gathered in the square. Farmers, traders, nobles, and servants all whispering behind cupped hands. "That's him," someone muttered. "The boy from Sorrow." "The land snatcher." "No, the one with the wells." Jabez kept his head high, not in pride, but in peace. Oren had wanted to come. So had several workers, even Elon, but Jabez had come alone, just him, his worn cloak, and the prayer that had shaped his whole life. Inside the great hall, Lord Haran sat high on the bench of judgment, surrounded by 4 elders. His rings glinted in the morning light. "Well," Haran said loudly, "look what the wind dragged in." Jabez bowed politely. "You summoned me." The chief elder, a man with deep lines on his face and snow-white hair, nodded. "Lord Haran claims you've taken territory that rightly belongs to Ziph. He says you violated a verbal agreement." "There was no agreement," Jabez replied calmly. "Only an offer, one I declined." A murmur passed through the crowd. Haran raised a brow. "You think you can just decline the authority of this council?" "I can decline a gift that comes with a chain." The room fell still. Even the elders exchanged glances. "You claim God led you to that land?" another elder asked. "I don't just claim it," Jabez said. "I live in it. I dug wells where no one else would. I prayed where others cursed. I stayed when others ran. And the land changed, not because of who I am, but because of who God is." Someone in the back of the hall said, "He speaks true. We've seen the valley. It's full of life." Haran's eyes narrowed. "Speak again and be removed," he barked, but another voice rose from the side of the room, older, wiser. It was Elon. He stepped forward, removing his hood. "I am not from Judah," he said, "but I have walked among you, traded with you, and listened. And this young man, Jabez, carries the name of Sorrow. Yet I have seen more joy in his valley than in any city I've passed." Haran stood. "This is a matter for Ziph." "And what is Ziph?" Elon said. "If not a place that was once unwanted land too." Gasps echoed. Jabez blinked. Elon had just turned Haran's own words against him. The chief elder banged his staff once. "We will vote," he said. The elders leaned in. Whispers. Long silences. Then the staff struck the floor again. "The council finds no fault in Jabez," the elder declared. "The land shall remain his, and his name, though once sorrowful, shall be remembered for faith, not pain." The crowd burst into cheers. Haran stormed from the hall, his cloak snapping behind him like thunder. But Jabez, he simply bowed his head and whispered, "Thank you, Lord." As he stepped back into the light, Orrin ran to meet him. "You did it!" "No," Jabez said with a smile. "God did." Again, when Jabez returned to the valley, it wasn't quiet anymore. Children ran laughing between fig trees. Women knelt beside the spring, filling jars. A new cart trail had formed where the old path used to be. And tents, so many tents, lined the edge of the grove, their flaps fluttering in the breeze. Orrin met him at the gate with wide eyes. "While you were gone," he said breathlessly, "more people came. Travelers, families, widows. They heard what happened in Zip. They heard about you." Jabez blinked. "Me?" "They say you're the one who prayed for a blessing and got it." He looked around. The land that once held silence now held stories. And every eye that turned toward him was filled with something more than curiosity. It was hope. That evening, Jabez walked the rows of tents. A father stopped him. "My sons are hungry, but we've come to start over. Can we plant near the river?" A woman with tired eyes said, "I lost everything in the drought, but your story, it gave me courage." And a child, barely old enough to speak, grabbed Jabez's cloak and whispered, "Thank you for the water." He found Ellen sitting near the fire later, sipping warm broth. "Did you ever think," Jabez asked, "that asking God for more would feel so heavy?" Elon smiled. "Blessings aren't always soft. Sometimes they weigh more than the burdens we prayed to escape." Jabez looked into the flames. "I asked God to enlarge my territory, but now that it's happening, I feel like I'm in over my head." Elon nodded. "That means you're doing it right." Jabez laughed softly. "That's a strange kind of comfort." Later that night, Jabez walked alone down to the second spring, the one that had bubbled up near the stone of the old idol site. He knelt, touched the water, and prayed. "Lord, you answered me. You gave me more. But I don't want to build anything that forgets you. Teach me how to lead, how to serve, how to stay humble." A soft breeze moved through the reeds, and he felt peace. The next morning, the valley woke early. New voices joined the old ones. New stories found room among the trees. And Jabez? He no longer prayed just for himself. He prayed for them all. Because when God enlarges your territory, He's also enlarging your heart. The valley buzzed with activity. New tents went up every day. Children ran through orchards that didn't exist 2 seasons ago. Shepherds built stone walls. Traders set up tables. But as the days passed, something else crept in. Not fear, not famine, but friction. "I was here first," one man snapped, arms crossed over his chest. "This plot was open when we arrived," another argued. "We've already started planting." Across the stream, 2 families quarreled over a single fig tree. Further up the hill, craftsmen squabbled about where to build the storehouse. Jabez tried to mediate, walking from group to group. "Let's share what we can," he said gently. "This land was given, not taken. It was blessed, not bought." But tempers rose like summer heat. "They came for your blessing," Orrin told him, "but now some want to control it." That evening, Jabez sat beneath the large terebinth tree at the center of the camp, the same one where he had first whispered his bold prayer, but this time he said nothing, until Elon sat beside him. "You're quieter than usual," Elon said. "I don't know what to do," Jabez admitted. "I prayed for God to enlarge my territory. I didn't know it would come with this much noise." Elon chuckled. "You prayed for something big. Now you're living inside of it." Jabez stared at the tree bark. "I wanted to bless people, not break them apart. Elon leaned back against the trunk, then remind them what brought them here. The next morning, Jabez gathered the whole valley, men, women, children, visitors, workers. All stood under the tree, murmuring among themselves. Jabez stepped forward. "I was once a boy, with nothing but a broken name," he said. "Jabez. Pain. That's what people call me." He let the silence stretch. "But I asked God for more. Not just for land, for freedom, for peace, for His hand to guide me." He looked across the crowd. God answered. And this valley is proof, not just because of the water or the trees, but because you are here. He stepped closer to the people. "But this blessing isn't mine. It never was. It belongs to God. And if we forget that, we'll turn this place into the very thing we were running from." A hush fell. A man stepped forward slowly. "I argued over a fig tree yesterday. I forgot why I came." A woman added, "I came for hope, not for land." And then the people began to speak words of repentance, unity, gratitude. Just like that, the tension cracked and healing slipped through. That night, Jabez stood beneath the stars and lifted his hands. "Thank you," he whispered, "for letting me see that blessing isn't about what we own, but what we give." The valley was quiet again, not silent but settled. Families worked side by side. Disputes had turned into dinners. The fields were green, the wells ran clear, and laughter had taken root. Jabez walked the edges of the territory, checking the markers where new homes had been built. Every time he passed one, someone waved, offered a meal, or whispered a quiet "thank you." He always answered the same way: "Thank God, not me." That evening, as the sky turned orange and the shadows grew long, a rider appeared at the southern ridge. A familiar rider, cloak flowing, gold trim flashing in the sun. Orrin squinted. "You've got to be kidding." It was Lord Haran. He rode in slower this time. No guards, no chariot parade, just one horse, one satchel, and an unreadable expression. Jabez stepped forward as the others gathered at a distance. Haran dismounted with a grunt. "Your valley has grown." Jabez nodded. "By God's hand." Haran looked around. "And by your leadership." Jabez didn't respond. Haran sighed and pulled a scroll from his satchel. "I brought a new offer." Orrin groaned. But Haran held up a hand. "Listen first." He unrolled the scroll and began reading. "The territory of Jabez shall remain independent, but with council support, official roads, trade routes, and shared defense. In return, the valley would fly the banner of Ziph." Jabez raised an eyebrow. "So, not control, just partnership?" Haran nodded. "I'll admit I was wrong. You've done something no one else could. I don't want to own it anymore. I just want to be part of it." He stepped closer. "Think of the safety, the trade, the growth. Think bigger, Jabez." The old Jabez might have hesitated. He might have wondered what others would say. He might have heard the echo of his old name, sorrow, and thought, this could finally erase it forever. But not this Jabez. He smiled gently. "You want to be part of something blessed," he said, "but blessing doesn't come through banners or contracts." He placed a hand over his chest. "It comes from here, from walking with God, not with politics." Haran shifted. "So, is that a no?" Jabez looked at him kindly. "It's a thank you, but no." Haran blinked, then nodded. "You've changed," he said. Jabez smiled. "I've grown, because I finally stopped asking men for approval and started asking God for more." Haran turned, mounted his horse, and rode back toward the hills. Not angry this time, almost thoughtful. That night, Orrin clapped Jabez on the back. "You just turned down the most powerful man in 3 regions." "I didn't turn him down," Jabez said. "I just chose something better." Orrin grinned. "What's that?" "Peace, purpose, presence." Morning dew sparkled on the grass as children's voices echoed across the valley. Jabez stood on the ridge beside the old terebinth tree, watching a group of boys chase one another with sticks pretending to be swords. A little girl, no more than 5, ran up beside him and tugged on his robe. "Mama says you prayed and God gave you a river." Jabez smiled. "Not a river, just a spring." "It looks like a river to me." She skipped away before he could answer, laughing. Orrin stepped up beside him, arms crossed. "You know, once upon a time, no one would speak to you. Now even the toddlers think you're a prophet." "I'm not a prophet," Jabez said, "just someone who asked God to do something only he could do." That afternoon, the oldest boys, some of them now nearing manhood, gathered around Jabez near the fire circle. "Tell us again," one asked, "what you prayed." Jabez smiled. "It wasn't long, but I meant every word." He looked around the circle. "I asked God to bless me, to enlarge my territory, to let his hand be with me, and to keep me from evil so I wouldn't cause pain." The boys sat quietly, taking it in. One raised his hand slowly. "Why didn't you ask to be rich?" Jabez chuckled. "Because riches fade, blessing doesn't." Another asked, "Why didn't you ask to be famous?" "I didn't want to be known for being great. I wanted to be remembered for trusting the one who is." He stood in motion for them to follow. They walked through the valley, past the springs, the fields, the stone altars where people still gathered to give thanks. "Do you see all this?" Jabez asked. They nodded. "None of it came because I was strong, or clever, or lucky." He stopped and turned to face them. "It came because I believe that God sees us, even when others forget us, even when the world gives us names like sorrow, even when we start at the bottom." The wind stirred the olive trees. "Blessing," Jabez said, "isn't just getting what you ask for. It's becoming the kind of person who knows who to ask." That night, Jabez sat by the fire with Orrin and Elon. He looked out over the land, alive, growing, filled with laughter and worship. "I used to think my story was about me," he said, "but now I see it was always about him, about what God can do when one person dares to believe." Elon raised a cup of wine. "To the man who asked." Orrin raised his too, and to the God who answered. Jabez lifted his gaze to the stars. May the next generation ask even bigger. Years passed. The trees grew tall in Jabez's valley. The children became parents. The wells never ran dry. And Jabez, the boy once known for sorrow, became the man everyone called blessed. He no longer needed to lead every decision, settle every dispute, or build every wall. The people had grown. The valley had leaders of its own now, people he had taught, prayed for, and walked beside. And Jabez? He walked slower, but he walked still. One morning, Jabez sat beneath the terebinth tree, the same tree where he'd once prayed for more. Now his hair was white, his hands weathered by years of labor, blessing, and battle. Miriam, now a grandmother herself, sat beside him, peeling pomegranates for the little ones. "They still come to you," she said softly. He smiled. "I think they're just waiting to see if I'll ever stop talking about that one prayer." "You won't." "No," he said, "I won't." She laughed. "You were always stubborn." "No," he grinned, "I was always hungry." Later that day, a young boy approached Jabez, maybe 10 years old, nervous, eyes wide. "Sir," the boy said, "is it true that you used to be different?" Jabez raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "That you were born with a bad name, that no one believed in you." Jabez patted the ground beside him. The boy sat. "It's true," Jabez said. "People expected me to cause pain, to fail. But I chose not to carry what they gave me. I asked God for something better." "Did he answer?" Jabez didn't point to the fields, or the homes, or the scrolls of stories written about him. He just smiled gently. "I'm still breathing, aren't I?" The boy laughed, then hesitated. "Can I pray like that too?" Jabez nodded. "You must." That night, Jabez walked the valley path one more time. He saw lanterns flickering in windows. He heard children giggling over warm bread. He passed a family singing a psalm around their fire, and with each step, his heart was full. Not of pride, but of awe. Because none of this came from a throne or an army. It came from a moment, long ago, when one hurting boy dared to believe that God listens. And when he whispered a prayer beneath the stars, heaven answered. Jabez passed away in peace, quietly, faithfully. And though he left no great monuments, his prayer remained. Spoken, shared, written. "O Lord, that you would bless me indeed and enlarge my territory, that your hand would be with me, and that you would keep me from evil, that I may not cause pain." And to this day, when people feel forgotten, small, or stuck in a name they didn't choose, they remember the boy called Sorrow, who asked God for something more and received it. Because he believed that when your heart is right, it's okay to ask God for big things, and the God who hears still answers. Is right. It's okay to ask God for big things, and the God who hears still answers.